Figured I'd do a little update video. Where we left off last time was blocks were on their way to the machine shop, getting checked out, getting cleaned. Radiators at the radiator shop, getting checked out since it's off. It wasn't leaking, but the tank needed some repair down there. We want to make it look good. And the magneto is currently being rebuilt. I'll probably expect to have that back at least by the end of the month. And so we're moving on to the rotating assembly and finding some very interesting things. So when you have no manual and there's not much information, you really got to pay attention to stuff. So got the rest of the pistons off and we're looking at the top of the rods here, right? So let's see if I can get a better view. So how these worked, they had fold over locks and they had pins in there or bolts to lock the wrist pins in place. So you notice the bolts on this side, bolts on this side, bolts on this side. Not number two, the rod's flipped around. So that makes me wonder, we know somebody's been in here, but I would assume that all have to be facing the same direction. Another thing that I found kind of interesting is, see if I can get in here. I'll zoom in and shine the light on it. See that witness mark? There's a scrape. So something made contact there as I rolled it over that I couldn't replicate. I mean, obviously it probably happened a long time ago, but makes you wonder, pay attention to all those things. If it was because this one was rotated the other way around that happened. So as I'm taking this apart, I'm looking for other consistencies in here, trying to see what's like and what's not alike to compare it, like this rod being flipped around, assuming that they're all supposed to be on the right-hand side. If you look on the top, see that little brass plug? There's one there. There's one on the right side of this rod, even though it's kind of smashed up. If you look down on number one, the camera won't focus. You'll see there's one missing, but what's underneath it is just the babbitt and the bearing. And this one has one on the right side. It's just kind of loose in there. I don't know if it's like a bearing gauge or I don't know what it's for. But anyway, what I noticed is it's on the right-hand side. It's on the right-hand side, even though this rod should be flipped the other way. This one's on the right-hand side, this one's on the left-hand side. So I wonder if it was every other one or what. I don't even know what it does. No book to reference. But where we're going with this is I've got the linkage that slides the engine around unhooked, and I got this slid way forward in the chassis here, so it's kind of hanging off the front. I'm going to get into the rotating assembly next, and I'm going to end up pulling this whole thing out because it's going to be a lot easier. Because this oil pump drive, I was looking at this, and it's built like right in the back of the oil pan. I mean, I've been scraping grease and scraping grease and scraping grease just to try to find everything. But it looks like that's like that drive is just a slip fit, and then that whole pump will just come off with the pan. And I know there's a screen under there where it filters, pulls back up and puts it in there. So another thing that's interesting is Waukesha was casting aluminum back in the teens. This whole assembly is aluminum, which is kind of cool. A lot of people don't think they were doing it that early, but they made a lot of truck engines and they advertised this stuff to be like really lightweight engines for your tractors and stuff. So let's work on getting this flywheel off tomorrow just to get the weight balanced on here and move some stuff around, because I'm gonna need to put this on the bench. So all my pretty clean pieces over there gotta get moved. And I'll show you one other not so good find. So here's piston number 3. Crack. There's 2 cracks actually. And if you look, you see it's kind of like flat spotted. And then if I look at this, I see it's been repaired. I don't know if that was a factory deal or what, but you can see the thickness isn't quite right, and somebody was grinding or machining on it. It was like looks like a casting flaw. And I just put some goop in there. So that's not good. And see my little marks, I mark every one just for reference. so I know where they came out of. And these like bushings, you know, wrist pin bushings are pressed, and every other one of these was tight. All of a sudden I was taking this apart and it just slides right out, but it won't slide out the other way. So I'm like, well, what the heck? That shouldn't fit that loose anyway. And then you see, somebody just peened it with a punch to retain it, top and bottom on both sides. Both bushings just fall right out. It's how loose they were. So I don't know. We'll see what else I find in the bottom end of this. So these are off. I'm going to throw them in the ultrasonic, and along with some other parts, and we'll get this engine apart and hopefully find good things. Makes you wonder when you start seeing some of these little janky repairs in there and things put together wrong, and it's pretty clear to me I got to get this case apart and put up on the table and look at it just to clean all the oil galleys out and stuff. There's a bunch of sludge in there, but I'm I mean, it should be pretty durable. It's handled all that vibration all these years, but just even trying to lift this up with the engine hoist, I don't even know where to tie onto it. You know, I don't want to, I'm sure I'd be fine just grabbing some of them studs. They're not just threaded into the aluminum, they actually have nuts on the back of them. Or would I be better off slinging it, or, you know, we'll make it lightweight and get at it. So I'll do a governor clip, and then we'll see on the next update. Let's take a look at the rebuilt governor assembly. So where we left off last time was I had new rollers, pins made. These were bored out, new pins here. Ear was cut off, re-welded, all the damage was repaired. So I got all the new pieces fit tight. And what's left is what would appear to be a simple assembly. Well, when I was taking this apart, I had to pull this piece off because I wanted to get around closer to the center of the gear to pull on it. Because if you take one of those cheap pullers and you put them on the edge, you could chip the gears. And so took this apart, got the nuts and bolts out, threw them in a bucket, whatever. Come back to put it back together. Come to realize that everything on here must have been hand fitted. So if you look here, you'll see how like low the hole comes out. Over here, this is where they had the safety wire running through everything. Here it's up higher. So what I'm saying is the angles are different. So everyone was drilled, some were like this, some were like this. So every nut was specific to every bolt. To make that more complicated, the castings are kind of crude, right? So they can be thicker in one spot, thinner in another. So every bolt was in a specific location and drilled specifically for the tightness on that spot because of the different depths. So then when you go to put it back together, you have 16 combinations to which one fits where. And then you have this governor piece that bolts onto the cam gear, can be flipped 180 degrees. And even though it feels good or is mostly flat, you can't really tell until you start putting bolts in it to try to make it work exactly right. So what you basically end up with is a 32 combination Rubik's Cube. And even here you'll see there's a casting number in there. So where this nut fit, there was one specific there because this is raised higher than the rest. So after some screwing around, I got everything nice and tight, all the holes lined up, everything figured out the way it's supposed to be. But it's one of those things where you would never thought to pay attention to every nut you take apart. It's just kind of crazy how they did things. So this is rebuilt and together. Let's see if I can reach back far enough. They have the weights on the back. They just fly out when the engine speeds up. And then you have this piece that fits over. This is the one that was built back up and machined back down. Slides over that, fits on those rocker arms. And then as it sped up, you can see it would raise up, pull that lever, which would push a rod and turn a butterfly in the intake. And that is the rebuilt governor assembly. A lot of repaired parts, a lot more to go.